Welcome back to Paper Cuts, everyone. Last we left off, we started in on Paradise Lost and found that despite the archaic English, this is a rather interesting story. We left off right at a chapter boundary, although this particular work calls them books rather than chapters. We're going to dive right into chapter 3 of 12. So let's get right into it. Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven firstborn, or of the eternal co-eternal beam. May I express thee unblamed, since God is light, and never but in unapproached light, dwelt from eternity, dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence increate, or hear'st thou rather pure ethereal stream, whose fountain who shall tell? Before the sun, before the heavens thou wert, and at the voice of God, as with a mantle didst invest, the rising world of waters dark and deep, one from the void and formless infinite. Thee I revisit now with bolder wing, escaped the Stygian pool, though long detained in that obscure sojourn, while in my flight, through utter and through middle darkness borne, with other notes then to the Orphean lyre, I sung of chaos and eternal night, taught by the heavenly muse to venture down the dark descent, and up to reascend. Though hard and rare, thee I revisit safe, and feel thy sovereign vital lamp. But thou revisit'st not these eyes, that roll in vain to find thy piercing ray, and find no dawn. So thick a drop serene hath quenched their orbs. Their orbs? Or dim suffusion veiled. Yet not the more cease I to wander, where the muses haunt clear spring, or shady grove, or sunny hill, smit with the love of sacred song, but chief thee Zion and flowery brooks, beneath that wash thy hallowed feet and warbling flow, nightly I visit, nor sometimes forget those other two equalled with me in fate, so were I equalled with them in renown, blind Thamris and blind Maeonids, and Tiresias and Phineus prophets old, then feed on thoughts, then voluntary move harmonious numbers, as the wakeful bird sings darkling, and in shadiest covert tunes her nocturnal note. Thus with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of evening or morn, or the sight of vernal bloom or summer's rose, or flocks or herds, or human face divine. But cloud instead, and ever-during dark, surrounds me from the cheerful ways of men, cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair, presented with a universal blank of nature's works, to me expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much the rather thou, celestial light, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There plant eyes, all mist from thence, purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. Now had the Almighty Father from above, from the pure empyrean where he sits high throned above all height, bent down his eye, his own works and their works at once to view. About him all the sanctities of heaven stood thick as stars, and from his sight received beatitude past utterance. On his right the radiant image of his glory sat, his only Son. On earth he first beheld our two first parents, yet the only two of mankind, in the happy garden placed, reaping immortal fruits of joy and love, uninterrupted joy, unrivalled love, in blissful solitude. He then surveyed hell and the gulf between, and Satan there, coasting the wall of heaven on this side night, in the dun air sublime, and ready now to stoop with wearied wings and willing feet on the bare outside of this world that seemed firm land embosomed without firmament, uncertain which in ocean or air. Him God, beholding from his prospect high, wherein past, present, and future he beholds, thus to his only Son foreseeing spake.
Only forgotten Son, seest thou what rage transports our adversary, whom no bounds prescribe, no bars of hell, nor all the chains heaped on him there, nor yet the main abyss wide interrupt can hold. So bent he seems on desperate revenge, that shall redound upon his rebellious head. And now, though through all restraint broke loose, he wings his way not far off heaven, in the precincts of light, directly toward the new created world, and man there placed with purpose to essay, if him by force he can destroy, or worse, by some false guile pervert, and shall pervert, for man will hearken to his glozing lies, and easily transgress the sole command, sole pledge of his obedience, so will fall he and his faithless progeny. Whose fault but his own? Ingrid, he had of me all he could have. I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall. Such I created all the ethereal powers and spirits, both them who stood and them who failed. Freely they stood who stood, and fell who fell. Not free, what proof they could have given sincere, of true allegiance, constant faith or love, where only what they needs must do appeared, not what they would, what praise could they receive? What pleasure I from such obedience paid, when will and reason's also choice, useless and vain, of freedom both despoiled, made passive both, had served necessity, not me. They therefore, as to right belonged, so were created, and nor can justly accuse their maker, or their making, or their fate, as if predestination overruled their will, disposed by absolute decree or high foreknowledge. They themselves decreed their own revolt, not I. If I had foreknowledge had no influence on their fault, which had no less proved certain unknown. So, without least impulse or shadow of fate, or aught by me immutably foreseen, they trespass, author to themselves in all, both what they judge and what they choose. For so I formed them free, and free they must remain, till they enthrall themselves. I else must change their nature, and revoke the high decree unchangeable, eternal, which ordained their freedom. They themselves ordain their fall. The first sort by their own suggestion fell, self-tempted, self-depraved. Man falls deceived by the other first. Man therefore shall find grace, the other none, in mercy and justice both. Through heaven and earth so shall my glory excel, but mercy first and last shall brightest shine.
Thus God spake, thus while God spake, ambrosial fragrance filled all heaven, and in the blessed spirits elect sense of new joy ineffable diffused. Beyond compare the Son of God was seen, most glorious, in him all his Father shone, substantially expressed, and in his face divine compassion visibly appeared, love without end, and without measure grace, which uttering thus he to his Father spake. O Father, gracious was that word which closed thy sovereign sentence, that man should find grace, for which both heaven and earth shall high extol thy praises, with the innumerable sound of hymns and sacred songs, wherewith thy throne encompassed shall resound the ever blessed. For man finally be lost, should man thy creature late so loved, thy youngest son, fall circumvented thus by fraud, though joined with his own folly, that be far from thee, thou Father, who art judge of all things made, and judgest only the right. Or shall the adversary thus obtain his end, and frustrate thine, and fulfill his malice, and thy goodness bring to naught? Or proud return, though to his heavier doom, yet with revenge accomplished, and to hell draw after him the whole race of mankind, by him corrupted? Or wilt thyself abolish thy creation, and unmake for him, for what thy glory thou hast made? So should thy goodness and thy greatness both be questioned and blasphemed without defense. To whom the great Creator thus replied,
O Son, in whom my soul hath chief delight, Son of my bosom, Son, who art alone my word, my wisdom, and effectual might, all hast thou spoken as my thoughts are, all as my eternal purpose hath decreed. Man shall not quite be lost, but saved. Who will? Yet not of will in him, but grace in me, freely vouchsafed. Once more I will renew his lapsed powers, though forfeited and enthralled by sin to foul exorbitant desires, upheld by me, and once more he should stand, he shall stand on even ground against his mortal foe, by me upheld, that he may know how frail his fallen condition is, and to me I owe all his deliverance, and to none but me. Some I have chosen of my peculiar grace, elect above the rest, so is my will. The rest shall hear me call, and oft be warned of their sinful state, and to appease sometimes the incensed deity, while offered grace invites, for I will steer their senses dark. What may suffice and soften stony hearts to pray, repent, and bring obedience due, to prayer, repentance, and obedience due, though but endeavoured with sincere intent, mine ear shall not be slow, mine eye not shut. And I will place within them as a guide my umpire conscience, whom if they will hear, light after light whilst they shall obtain, and to the end persisting safe arrive. This my long sufferance and my day of grace, they who neglect and scorn shall never taste, but hard be hardened, blind be blinded more, that they may stumble on and deeper fall, and none but such from mercy I exclude. And yet all is not done. Man, disobeying, disloyal, breaks his fealty, and sins against the high supremacy of heaven, affecting Godhead, and so losing all, to expiate his treason, hath not left, but to destruction sacred and devote, he with his whole posterity must die he, or justice must, unless for him some other able and as willing pay the rigid satisfaction, death for death. Say, heavenly powers, where shall we find such love? Which of ye will be mortal to redeem man's mortal crime? And just the unjust to save, dwells in all heaven charity so dear.
And so he asked, but all the heavenly choir stood mute, and silence was in heaven. On man's behalf patron or intercessor none appeared, much less that durst upon his own head draw that deadly forfeiture and ransom set. And now without redemption all mankind must have been lost, adjudged to death and hell, by doom severe, had not the Son of God, in whom the fullness dwells of love divine, his dearest meditation thus renewed. Father, thy word is past, man shall find grace, and shall grace not find means that finds her way, the speediest thy winged messengers, to visit all thy creatures, and to all comes unprevented, unimplored, unsought. Happy for man so coming, he her aid can never seek, once dead in sins and lost. Atonement for himself or offering meet, indebted and undone, hath none to bring. Behold me then, me for him, life for life. I offer, on me let thine anger fall. Account me man, I for his sake will leave thy bosom, and this glory next to thee freely put off, and for him lastly die well pleased. On me let death wreak all his rage, under his gloomy power I shall not long lie vanquished. Thou hast given me to possess life in myself for ever, by thee I live. Though now to death I yield, and is due all that of me that can die, yet that debt paid, thou wilt not leave me in the loathsome grave, his prey, nor suffer my unspotted soul forever with corruption there to dwell. But I shall rise victorious, and subdue my vanquisher, spoiled of his vaunted spoil. Of his wanted spoil, rather. I shall rise victorious, and subdue my vanquisher, spoiled of his wanted spoil. Death and his death's wound shall then receive, and stoop inglorious of this mortal song disarmed. I through the ample air in triumph high shall lead hell captive, meagre hell, and show the powers of darkness bound. Thou at the sight pleased out of heaven shall look down and smile, while by thee I raise to ruin all my foes. Death last, and with his carcass glut the grave, and then with the multitude of my redeemed shall enter heaven long absent, and return, Father, to see thy face, wherein no cloud of anger shall remain, but peace assured, and reconcilement. Wrath shall be no more thenceforth, but in thy presence joy entire. And here his words ended, but his meek aspect, silent yet, spoke. and breathed immortal love to mortal men, above which only shone filial obedience. As a sacrifice glad to be offered, he attends the will of his great Father. Admiration seized all heaven, what this might mean, and whither tend, wondering, but soon the Almighty thus replied.
O thou in heaven and earth, the only peace found out for mankind under wrath. O thou, my sole complacence, well thou know'st how dear to me are all my works, nor man the least, though last created, that for him I spare thee from my bosom and right hand to save. By losing thee awhile, the whole race lost. Thou therefore, whom thou only canst redeem, their nature also to thy nature join, and be thyself man among men on earth, made flesh, when the time shall be of virgin seed, by wondrous birth. Be thou in Adam's room, the head of all mankind, through Adam's son. As in him perish all men, so in thee, as from a second root, shall be restored, as many as are restored, without thee none. His crime makes guilty all his sons, thy merit imputed shall absolve them who renounce their own both righteous and unrighteous deeds, and live in thee transplanted, and from thee receive new light. So man, as is most just, shall just satisfy for man, be judged and die, and dying rise, and rising with him raise his brethren, ransomed with his own dear life. So heavenly love shall outdo hellish hate, giving death and dying to redeem so dearly, to redeem what hellish hate so easily destroyed, and still destroys in those who, when they may, shall accept my grace. Nor shalt thou, by descending to assume man's nature, lessen or degrade thine own, because thou hast, though throned in highest bliss equal to God, and equally enjoying godlike fruition, quitted all to save a world from utter loss, and hast been found by merit no more than birthright son of God, found worthiest to be so by being good far more than great or high, because in thee love hath abounded more than glory abounds, and therefore thy humiliation shall exalt with thee thy manhood also to this throne. Here shalt thou sit incarnate, here shalt reign both God and man, son of both God and man, anointed universal king. All power I give thee, reign forever, and assume thy merits. Under thee as head supreme thrones, princedoms, powers, and dominions I reduce. All knees to thee shall bow, and of them that bide in heaven, or earth, or under earth in hell, when thou attended gloriously from heaven, shalt in the sky appear, and from thee send the summoning archangels to proclaim thy dread tribunal. Forthwith from all the winds the living, and forthwith the sighted dead of all past ages, to the general doom shall hasten, and such a peal shall rouse their sleep. And then all thy saints assembled, thou shalt judge bad men and angels. They arranged shall sink beneath thy sentence. Hell in her numbers full thenceforth shall be forever shut. Meanwhile the world shall burn, and from her ashes spring new heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell, and after all their tribulations long see the golden days, fruitful of golden deeds, with joy and love triumphant, and fair truth. Then thou thy regal sceptre shalt lay by, for thy regal sceptre you shall no more need. God shall be all in all, but in all ye gods adore him, who to compass all this dies. Adore the Son, and honor him as me. No sooner had the Almighty ceased, than all the multitude of angels, with a shout as loud as numbers without number, sweet as from blessed voices, uttering joy, heaven, rung with jubilee and loud hosannas, filled the eternal regions. Lowly reverent towards either throne they bow, and to the ground with solemn adoration down they cast the crowns, involved with amaranth and gold, immortal amaranth.
A flower which once in paradise, fast by the tree of life, began to bloom, but soon, for man's offence, in heaven removed where it grew, there grows, and flowers aloft shading the fount of life, and where the river of bliss, through the midst of heaven, rolls over Elysian flowers, her amber stream. With these that never fade, the spirits elder bind their resplendent locks entwined with beams. Now in loose garlands, thick thrown off, the night pavement, like that of a sea of jasper, shone when empurpled with celestial roses smile. With these that never fade, the spirits elect bind their resplendent locks, enwreathed with beams, now in loose garlands, thick thrown off. The bright pavement that like a sea of jasper shone, empurpled with celestial roses, smiled. They crowned again their golden harps they took, harps ever tuned, that glittering by their side like quivers hung, and with preamble sweet of charming symphony they introduced their sacred song, and waken raptures high. No voice exempt, no voice but well could join melodious part, such concord is in heaven. The Father first they sung, omnipotent, immutable, immortal, infinite, eternal King, the author of all being, fountain of light, thyself invisible, amidst the glorious brightness where thou sitt'st, throned inaccessible, but when thou shades the full blast of thy beams, and through a cloud drawn round about thee like a radiant shrine, dark with excessive bright thy skirts appear, yet dazzle heaven, that's brightest seraphim approach not, but with both wings veil their eyes. Thee next they sang of all creation first, begotten Son, divine similitude, in whose conspicuous countenance without cloud made visible the Almighty Father shines, whom else no creature can behold. On thee impressed the effulgence of his glory abides, transfused on thee his ample spirit rests. He, heaven of heavens, and all the powers therein, by thee created, and by thee threw down the aspiring dominations. Thou that day thy father's dreadful thunder didst not spare, nor stop thy flaming chariot wheels that shook heaven's everlasting flame, while o'er the next thou drovest of warring angels disarrayed. Back from pursuit thy powers with loud acclaim, thee only extolled, son of thy father's might, to execute fierce vengeance on his foes, but not so on man. Him through their malice fallen, Father of mercy and grace, thou did not doom so strictly, but much more to pity incline. No sooner did thy dear and only Son perceive thee purposed not to doom frail man so strictly, but much more to pity inclined, he to appease thy wrath and end the strife of mercy and justice in thy face disconcerned. Regardless of the bliss wherein he sat, second to thee, offered himself to die for man's offence. O unexampled love where nowhere to be found less than divine. Hail, Son of God, Saviour of men, thy name shall be the copious matter of my song henceforth, and never shall my harp thy praise forget, nor from thy Father's praise disjoin. And thus they in heaven, above the starry sphere, their happy hours in joy and hymning spent. Meanwhile, upon the firm, opacious globe of this round world, whose first convex divides the luminous inferior orbs, enclosed from chaos in the inroad of darkness old, Satan, alighted, walks. A globe far off it seemed, now seems a boundless continent, dark, waste, and wild under the frown of night, that was starless and exposed, and ever-threatening storms of chaos blustering round, inclement sky. Save on that side from which the wall of heaven, though distant, far, soon small, reflection gains, of glimmering air, lest vexed with trumpest aloud. And here walked the fiend at large, in a spacious field. as when a vulture on Imus bred, whose snowy ridge the roving Tartar bounds, dislodging from a region scarce of prey, to gorge the flesh of lambs or of yearling kids, on hills where flocks are fed, flies toward the springs of Ganges or Hydaspes, Indian streams, but in his way lights on the barren plains of Serikana, where Chineses drive with sails and wind their caney wagons light. So in this windy sea of land the fiend walked up and down, alone bent on his prey, alone, for the other creature in this place, living or liveless, was to be found none yet, but store hereafter from the earth up hither like aerial vapours flew, of all things transitory and vain, when sin with vanity had filled the works of men, both all things vain and all who in vain things built their fond hopes of glory or lasting fame, or happiness in this or the other life, all who have their reward on earth, the fruits of painful superstition and blind zeal, not seeking but the praise of men, here find fit retribution, empty as their deeds, all the unaccomplished works of nature's hand, abortive, monstrous, or unkindly mixed, dissolved on earth, fleet hither and in vain, till final dissolution wander here, not of the neighbouring moon as some have dreamed, those argent fields more likely inhabitants, translated saints or middle spirits behold, betwixt the angelical and human kind. Hither of all ill-enjoyed sons and daughters born, first from ancient world, those giants came, with many a vain exploit, though then renowned. The boulders next of Babel, on the plain of Simnar, and still with vain design, new Babels, had they wherewithal would others build. And others came single. He to who be deemed a god leapt fondly into Atna's flames, Empedocles, and he to enjoy Plato's Elysium leapt into the sea, Cleombrotus, and many more too long, embryos and idiots, eremites and friars, white, black, and grey, with all their trumpery. Here pilgrims roam, that strayed so far to seek in Golgotha him dead who lives in heaven, and they to be sure of paradise, dying, put on the weeds of Dominic, or in Franciscan thinks to pass disguised. They pass the planet 7 and past the fixed, and that crystalline sphere whose balance weighs the trepidation talked, and that first moved, and now St. Peter at heaven's wicket seems to await them with his keys, and now at foot of heaven's ascent lift they their feet, when lo, a violent wind, cross from either coast, blows them transverse 10,000 leagues awry into the devious air. Then might ye see cowls, hoods, and habits with their wearers tossed and fluttered into rags, then relics, then beads, indulgences, dispenses, pardons, bulls, the sport of winds, all these upworld loft, fly o'er the backside of the world, far off into a limbo large and broad, since called the paradise of fools, to few unknown long after, now unpeopled and untrod. All this dark globe the fiend found as he passed, and long he wandered, till at last a gleam of the dawning light turned thitherward and haste his travelled steps. Far distant he descries, ascending by degrees magnificent up the wall of heaven, a structure high, at the top whereof, but far more rich appeared, the work as of a kingly palace gate, with frontispiece of diamond and gold embellished, thick with sparkling orient gems. The portal shone, imitable on earth by model or by shading pencil drawn. The stairs were such as whereon Jacob saw angels ascending and descending, bands of guardians bright, when he from Esau fled to Paddan Aram in the field of Luz, dreaming by night under the open sky, and walking cried, "This is the gate of heaven." Each stair mysteriously was meant, nor stood there a ways, but drawn up to heaven sometimes viewless, and underneath a bright sea flowed of jasper or of liquid pearl, whereon who came after earth, sailing arrived, wafted by angels, or flew over the lake, wrapped in a chariot drawn by fiery steeds. The stairs were then let down, whether to dare the fiend by easy ascent, or aggravate his sad exclusion from the doors of bliss, directed against which opened from beneath, just o'er the blissful seat of paradise, a passage down to earth, a passage wide, wider by far than that of the after times over Mount Zion, And though that were large o'er the promised land to God so dear, by which to visit oft those happy tribes, on high behest his angels to and fro passed frequent, and his eye with choice regard, from Peneus, the fount of Jordan's flood, to Beersaba, where the Holy Land borders on Egypt and the Arabian shore. So wide the opening seemed, where the bounds were set to darkness, such as bound the ocean wave. Satan from hence now on the lower stair, that scaled by steps of gold to heaven's gate, looks down with wonder at the sudden view of all this world at once. As when a scout, through dark and deserted ways, with peril gone all night, at last by break of cheerful dawn, obtains the brow of some high climbing hill, to which his eye discovers unaware the goodly prospect of some foreign land, first seen, or some renowned metropolis, with glistening spires and pinnacles adorned, which now the rising sun gilds with his beams. Such wonder seized, though after heaven seen, the spirit malign, but much more envy seized, at the sight of all this world beheld so fair. Round he surveys, and well might, where he stood, so high above the circling canopy of night's extended shade, from eastern point of Libra, to the fleecy star that bears Andromeda far off the Atlantic seas beyond the horizon, and then from pole to pole he views in breadth, and without longer pause, down right into the world's first region, throws his flight precipitant, and winds with ease through the pure marble air his oblique way amongst innumerable stars, that shone stars distant, but nigh hand seemed other worlds. Or other worlds they seemed, or happy isles, like those Hesperian gardens famed of old, fortunate fields and groves and fleury vales, thrice happy isles. But who dwelt happy there, he stayed not to inquire. Above them all the golden sun in splendor, like heaven, allured his eye. Thither his course he bends through the calm firmament, but up or down by centre, or eccentric, it was hard to tell, or longitude, where the great luminary, aloof the vulgar constellations thick, that from his lordly eye keep distance do, dispenses light from far. They, as they move their starry dance in numbers that compute days, months, years, towards his all-clearing lamp, turn swift their various motions, or are turned by his magnetic beam that gently warms the universe, and to each inward part with gentle penetration, though unseen, shoots invisible virtue, even to the deep. So wondrously was set his station bright. And there lands the fiend, a spot like which perhaps astronomer in the sun's lucent orb, through his glazed optic tube, yet never saw. The place he found beyond expression bright, compared with aught on earth, metal or stone, not all parts like, but all alike informed with radiant light, as glowing iron with fire. If metal, parts seemed cold, parts silver clear. If stone, carbuncle most, or chrysolite, ruby or topaz, to the 12 that shone in Aaron's breastplate. And a stone besides, imagined rather oft than elsewhere seen, that stone, or like to that which below philosophers in vain have often sought. In vain, though by their powerful art they bind volatile Hermes, and call up unbound in various shapes old Proteus from the sea, drained through a limbeck to his native form. What wonder then if fields and regions here breathe forth elixir pure, and rivers run potable gold, when one virtuous touch the alchemic sun, so far from us remote, produces with terrestrial humour, mixed here in the dark, so many precious things of colour glorious, and effect so rare. Here matter new to the gaze the devil met undazzled. Far and wide his eye commands, for sight no obstacle was found here, nor shade, but all sunshine, as when his beams at noon culminate from the equator, as they now shot upwards still direct, whence there was no way around. Shadow from body opaque can fall, and the air, not where so clear, sharpen of his visual ray, to objects distant far, whereby he soon saw within can a glorious angel stand, the same whom John had also seen in the sun. His back was turned, but not his progress hid. Of beaming sunny days, a golden tiara circling his head, and not less than his locks. Illustrious on his shoulders, fledged with wings, lay waving round, and on some great charge employed he seemed, fixed in cogitation deep. Glad was the spirit impure, as now in hope, to find who might direct his wandering flight to paradise, the happy seat of man, his journey's end and our beginning woe. But first he cast to change his proper shape, which else might work him danger or delay, and now a stripling cherub he appears, not of the prime, yet as such in his face. Youth smiled celestial, and to every limb suitable grace diffused, so well he feigned, under a coronet his flowing hair, in curls on either cheek played. Wings he wore of many a coloured plume sprinkled with gold, his habit fit for speed succinct, and held before his decent steps a silver wand. He drew not nigh unheard the angel bright, ere he drew nigh, his radiant visage turned, admonished by his ear, and straight was known the archangel Uriel, one of the seven who in God's presence nearest to his throne stand ready at command, and are his eyes that run through all the heavens, or down to the earth, bear his swift errands over moist and dry, over land and sea. Him Satan thus accosts: Uriel, for thou of those seven spirits that wait. This is Satan speaking. What was my Satan voice? You know what we're going to do? We're going to give Satan the
very silken and almost seductive tone.
Because he really does have that sort of silver tongue, doesn't he?
Uriel, for thou of those seven spirits that stand in sight of God's high throne, gloriously bright, the first art wont his great authentic will interpreter, through highest heaven to bring, where all his sons thy embassy attend, and here art likeliest by his supreme decree like honour to obtain, and as his eye does visit oft of this new creation round, unspeakable desire to see and know all these his wondrous works, but chiefly man, his delight and favour, him for whom all his works so wondrous he ordained, hath brought me from the choirs of cherubim alone, thus wandering. Brightest seraph tell, in which all of these shining orbs hath man his fixed seat, or fixed seat hath none, but all these shining orbs his choice to dwell, that I may find him, and with secret gaze or open admiration him behold, on whom the great Creator hath bestowed worlds, and on whom hath all these graces powered, that both in him and all things it is meet, the universal Maker may we praise, who justly hath driven out his rebel foes to deepest hell, and to repair that loss created this new happy race of men to serve him better. Wise are all his ways.
And so spake the false dissembler unperceived. For neither man nor angel can discern hypocrisy, the only evil that walks invisible, except to God alone, but by his permissive will, through heaven and earth, and oft through wisdom wake, suspicion sleeps at wisdom's gate, and to simplicity resigns her charge, while goodness thinks no ill where no ill seems, which now for once beguiled Uriel, though regent of the sun, and held the sharpest sighted spirit of all in heaven, who to the fraudulent imposture foul in his uprightness answer thus return: Fair angel, thy desire which tends to know the works of God, thereby to glorify the great workmaster, leads to no excess that preaches blame, but rather merits praise, the more it seems excess that led thee hither from thy imperial mansion thus alone, to witness with thine eyes what some perhaps contented with report here only in heaven. For wonderful indeed are all his works, pleasant to know, and worthiest to be all that had in remembrance always with delight. But what created mind can comprehend their number, or the wisdom infinite that brought them forth? But hid their causes deep. I saw, when at his word, the formless mass, this world's material mould, came to a heap. Confusion heard his voice, and wild uproar stood ruled, stood vast infinitude confined, till at his second bidding darkness fell, light shone, and order from disorder sprung. Swift to their several quarters fastened then the cumbrous elements, earth, flood, air, and fire, and this ethereal quintessence of heaven flew upwards, spirited with various forms, that rolled orbicular, and turned to stars numberless, as thou seest, and how they move. Each had his place appointed, each his course, the rest in circuit walls this universe. Look downward on that globe whose hither side, with light from hence, though but reflected, shine. That place is earth, the seat of man, that light his day, which else as the other hemisphere night would invade. But there the neighbouring moon, so call that opposite fair star, her aid timely interposes, and her monthly round still ending, still renewing, though mid heaven, with borrowed light her countenance triform, hence fills and empties to enlighten the earth, and in her pale dominion checks the night. That spot to which I point is paradise, Adam's abode, those lofty shades his bower. Thy way thou canst not miss, me mine requires. Thus said, he turned, and Satan, bowing low as to superior spirits, is wont in heaven, where honour due and reverence none neglects, took leave, and toward the coast of earth beneath, down from the ecliptic, sped with hoped success, throws his steep flight with many an airy wheel, nor stayed till on Niphiate's top he lights. Book 4. O for that warning voice which he who saw the apocalypse heard cry in heaven aloud, then when the dragon, put to second rout, came furious down to be revenged on men. Woe to the inhabitants on earth, that now, while time was, our first parents had been warned the coming of this secret foe, and escaped so haply so escaped his mortal snare. For now Satan, now first inflamed with rage, came down, the tempter, ere the accuser of mankind, to wreak on innocent frail man his loss of that first battle, and his flight to hell. Yet not rejoicing in his speed, though bold, far off and fearless, nor with cause to boast, begins his dire attempt, which nigh the birth now rolling, boils in his tumultuous chest, and like a devilish engine back recoils upon himself. Horror and doubt distract his troubled thoughts, and from the bottom stir the hell within him. For within him hell he brings, and round about him, nor from hell one step no more than from himself can fly by change of pace. Now conscience wakes despair, that slumbered wakes the bitter memory of what he was, what is, and what must be worse. Of worse deeds, worst sufferings must ensue. Sometimes towards Eden, which now lay in his view pleasant, his grieved look he fixes sad, sometimes towards heaven, and the full blazing sun, which now sat high in his meridian tower. Then much revolving thus in sighs began. O thou, with that surpassing glory crowned, look'st from thy sole dominion, like the God of this new world, at whose sight all the stars hide their diminished heads. To thee I call, but with no friendly voice, and add thy name, O sun, to tell thee how I hate thy beams, that bring to my remembrance from what state I fell, how glorious once above thy sphere, till pride and worse ambition threw me down, warring in heaven against heaven's matchless king. Ah, wherefore he deserved no such return from me, whom he created when I was in that bright eminence, and with his good upbraided none, nor was his service hard. What could be less than to afford him praise, the easiest recompense, and pay him thanks? How do? Yet all his good proved ill in me, and wrought but malice, lifted up so high I stained I stay in subjection, and the thought one step higher would set me highest, and in a moment quit the debt immense of endless gratitude, so burdensome, still paying, still to owe, forgetful what from him I still received, and understood not that a grateful by owing owes not, but still pays at once, indebted and discharged. What burden then? Oh, had his powerful destiny ordained me some inferior angel, I had stood then happy. No unbounded hope had raised ambition. And yet why not? Some other power as great might have aspired, and me, though mean, drawn to his part. But other powers as great fell not, but stand unshaken, from within or without, to all temptations armed. Hadst thou the same free will and power to stand? Thou hadst, whom hast thou then, or what to accuse, but heaven's free love dealt equally to all? Be then his love accursed, since love or hate to me alike it deals eternal woe. Nay, cursed be thou, since against his thy will chose freely what it now so justly rules. Me, miserable, which way shall I fly? Infinite wrath and infinite despair. Which way I fly is hell, myself am hell, and in the lowest deep a lower deep, still threatening to devour me, opens wide, to which the hell I suffer seems a heaven. Oh, then at last relent. Is there no place left for repentance, none for pardon left? None left but my submission, and that word disdain forbids me, and my dread of shame among the spirits beneath whom I seduced with other promises and other vaunts. Then to submit, boasting I could subdue the omnipotent. Ah me, they little know how dearly I abide that boast so vain. Under what torments inwardly I groan, while they adore me on the throne of hell. With diadem and sceptre high advanced, the lower still I fall, only supreme in misery, such joy ambition finds. But say I could repent, and could obtain by act of grace my former state, how soon would height recall high thoughts, how soon unsay what feigned submission swore, ease would recant vows made in pain, as violent and void. For never can true reconcilement grow, where wounds of deadly hate have pierced so deep, which would but lead me to a worse relapse and a heavier fall. So should I purchase dear, short intermission, bought with double smart. This knows my punisher, therefore as far from granting he, as I from begging peace. All hope excluded thus, behold instead of us outcast, exiled his new delight, mankind created and for him this world. So farewell hope, and with hope farewell fear, farewell remorse. All good to me is lost. Evil be thou my good, by thee at least divided empire with heaven's king I hold with thee, and by thee more than half perhaps will reign, as man ere long in this new world shall know. Thus he spake, with each passion dimming his face, thrice changed with pale ire, envy, and despair, which marred his borrowed visage, and betrayed him counterfeit, if any eye beheld him. For heavenly minds from such distempers foul are ever clear, whereof he's soon aware, each perturbation smoothed with outward calm, artificer of fraud, and was the first that practised falsehood under saintly shew, deep malice to conceal, couched with revenge, but not enough had practised to deceive Uriel once warned, whose eye pursued him down the way he went, and on the Assyrian mount saw him disfigured, more than could befall spirit of happy sort. His gestures fierce he marked in mad demeanour, and then alone, as he supposed, all unobserved, unseen. So on he fares, and to the border of Eden comes, where delicious paradise, now nearer, crowns with her enclosure green as with a rural mound the champion head of a steep wilderness, whose hairy sides with thicket overgrown, grotesque and wild access denied, and overhead upgrew insuperable height of loftiest shade, cedar and pine and fir and branching palm, a sylvan scene, and as the ranks ascend shade above shade, a woody theatre of stateliest view. Yet higher than their tops the verdurous wall of paradise upsprung, which to our general sire gave prospect large into his nether empire, neighbouring round. and higher than that wall, a circling row of the goodliest trees, loaden with the fairest fruit, blossoms, and fruits at once of golden hue appeared, with gay enamelled colours mixed, on which the sun more glad impressed his beams than in fair evening cloud or humid bough, when God hath showered the earth, so lovely seemed that landscape. And of now purer air meets his approach, and to the heart inspires vernal delight and joy, able to drive all sadness but despair. Now gentle gales, fanning their odoriferous wings, dispense native perfumes, and whisper thence they stole those balmy spoils. As when to them who sail beyond the Cape of Hope, and now are past Mozambique, off at sea northeast winds blow, Sabian odours from the spicy shore of Arabia the Blest. With such delay well pleased, they slack their course, and many a league cheered with a grateful smell, old ocean smiles. So entertained those odorous sweets the fiend who came their bane, though with them better pleased than Asmodeus with the fishy fume that drove him, though enamoured, from the spouse of Tobit's son, and with a vengeance sent from Media to post to Egypt, there fast bound. Now to the ascent of that steep savage hill Satan had journeyed on, pensive and slow, but further way found none, so thick entwined as one continued brake. The undergrowth of shrubs and tangling bushes had perplexed all path of man or beast that passed that way. One gate there only was, and that looked east on the other side, which when the arch-felon saw, due entrance he disdained, and in contempt at one slight bound high overleapt all bound of hill or highest wall, and sheer within lights on his feet, as when a prowling wolf, whom hunger drives to seek new haunt for prey, watching where shepherds pen their flocks at eve, in curdled coats among the fields secure, leaps o'er the fence with ease into the fold. Or as a thief bent to unhoard the cache of some rich burgher, whose substantial doors, cross-barred and bolted fast, fear no assault, in at the window climbs, or o'er the tiles, so climbed into his church lewd hirings climb. So climbed this first grand thief into God's fold, so since into his church lewd hirings climb. Thence up he flew, and on the tree of life, the middle tree, and highest there that grew, sat like a cormorant, yet not true life thereby regained, but sat devising death to them who lived, nor on the virtue thought of that life-giving plant, but only used the prospect, what well used had been the pledge of immortality. So little knows any, but God alone, to value right the good before him, but perverts best things to worst abuse, or to their meanest use. Beneath him with new wonder he views, to all delight of human sense exposed, in narrow room nature's whole wealth, yea more, a heaven on earth, for blissful paradise of God the garden was, by him in the east of Eden planted. Eden stretched her line from Oran eastward to the royal towers of great Seleucia, built by Grecian kings, or where in the sons of Eden, long before, dwelt in Telassar. In this pleasant soil his far more pleasant garden God ordained. Out of the fertile ground he caused to grow all trees of noblest kind for sight, smell, taste. And all amid them stood the tree of life, high, eminent, blooming ambrosial fruit of vegetable gold. And next to life our death, the tree of knowledge grew fast by, knowledge of good brought dear by knowing hill. Southward through Eden went a river large, nor changed his course, but through the shaggy hill passed underneath engulfed, for God had thrown that mountain as his garden, mould high raised upon the rapid current, which through veins of porous earth, with kindly thirst updrawn, rose a fresh fountain, and with many a rill watered the garden. Thence, united, fell down the steep glade, and the nether flood, which from his darksome passage now appears, and now divided into four main streams, runs divers, wandering a many famous realm and country, whereof here needs no account, but rather to tell how, if art could tell, how from that sapphire fount, the crisp brooks, rolling on orient pearl and sands of gold, with mazy air under pendant shades, ran nectar, visiting in each plant, and fed flowers worthy of paradise, which not nice art. In beds and curious knots, but nature boon powered forth profuse on hill and dale and plain, both where the morning sun had first warmly smote the open field, and where the unpierced shade embrowned the moontide bowers. Thus was the place, a happy rural seat, various view, a happy rural seat of various view, groves whose rich trees wept odorous gums and balm, others whose fruit burnished with golden rind. If true, here one lane of delicious taste, betwixt them lawns or level downs and flocks, grazing the tender herb where imposed, or palmy hillock, or the floury lap of some irrigous valley spread her store, flowers of all hue, and without thorn and rose. Another side, on umbrageous grots and caves of cool recess, o'er which the mantling vine lays forth her purple grape, and luxuriously creeps with luxuriant. Meanwhile murmuring down waters fall, down the slope hills, dispersed her in a lake, that to the fringed bank with myrtle crowned, her crystal mirror holds, and it unites their streams. The birds their choir apply, airs, vernal airs, breathing the smell of field and grove, attune the trembling leaves, while universal Pan knit with the graces and the hours and dance, led on the eternal spring, not that fair field of Enna, where Proserpine, gathering flowers herself, a fairer flower by gloomy Dis was gathered, which cost Ceres all that pain, to seek her through the world, nor that sweet grove of Daphne by Orontes, and the inspired Castalian spring, might with this paradise of Eden strive, nor that Nysian isle, girt with the river Triton, where old Sham, whom Gentiles Ammon call, and Libyan Jove, hid Amalthea and her florid son, young Bacchus, from his stepdame Rhea's eye, nor where Abassan kings their issue guard, Mount Amara, though this by some supposed true paradise, under the Ethiop line, by Nilus head, enclosed with shining rock, a whole day's journey high, but wide remote from this Assyrian garden, where the fiends saw undelighted all delight, all kind of living creatures new to sight and strange, to a far nobler shape, erect and tall, godlike erect, with their native honor clad in naked majesty, seemed lords of all, and worthy seemed, for in their looks divine the image of their glorious Maker shone, truth, wisdom, sanctity, severe and pure, severe, but in true filial freedom placed, whence true authority in men, though both not equal, as their sex not equal seemed, for contemplation he in valor formed, for softness she in sweet attractive grace, he for God only, she for God and him, his fair, large front and eye sublime declared, absolute rule, and Hyacinthian locks round from his parted forelock manly strung, clustering, but not beneath his shoulders broad. She is a veil down to the slender waist, her unadorned golden tresses wore dishevelled, but in wanton ringlets waved, as the vine curls her tendrils, which implied subjection, but required with gentle sway, and by her yielded, by him best received, yielded with coy submission, modest pride, and sweet reluctant amorous delay. Nor those mysterious parts were then concealed, then was not guilty shame, dishonest shame of nature's works, honour dishonourable, sin bred. How have ye troubled all mankind with shrews instead, mere shrews of seeming pure, and banished from man's life his happiest life, simplicity and spotless innocence. So passed they naked on, nor shunned the sight of God or angel, for they thought no ill. So hand in hand they passed, the loveliest pair that ever since in love's embraces met, Adam, the goodliest man of men, since born his sons, the fairest of her daughters, Eve. Under a tuft of shade that on green stood whispering soft by a fresh mountain side, they sat them down, and after no more toil of their sweet gardening labour than sufficed to recommend cool zephyr, and made ease more easy, wholesome thirst and appetite more grateful, for to their supper fruits they found, nectarine fruits which the compliant boughs yielded them, sidelong as they sat reclined on the soft downy bank damasked with flowers. The savoury pulp they chew, and in the rind, still as they thirsted, scooped from the brimming stream. Nor gentle purpose, nor endearing smiles wanted, nor youthful dalliance as beseems a fair couple linked in happy nuptial league, alone as they. About them frisking played all beasts of the earth, since wild and of all chase, in wood and wilderness, forest or den. Sporting the lion ramped, and in his paw dandled the kid. Bears, tigers, ounces, pards gambolled before them. The unwieldy elephant, to make them worth, used all his might, and wreathed his lithe proboscis. Closed the serpent, shy, insinuating, wove with Gordian twine his braided train, and of his fatal guile gave proof unheeded. Others on the grass couched, and now filled with pasture gazing sat, or bedward ruminating, for the sun declined was now hasting with prone career to the ocean isles, and in the ascending scale of heaven the stars that usher evening rose. When Satan still in gaze, as first he stood, scarce thus at length failed speech recovered, said, "O hell, what do mine eyes with grief behold into our room of bliss, thus high advanced, creatures of other mould, earthborn perhaps, not spirits, yet to heavenly spirits bright, little inferior, whom my thoughts pursue with wonder, and could love so lively shines in them divine resemblance, and such grace the hand that formed them on their shape hath poured. Ah, gentle pair, ye little think how nigh your change approaches, when all these delights will vanish and deliver you to woe, more woe the more your taste is now of joy. Happy, but for so happy ill secured, long to continue, and this high seat your heaven, ill fenced to a heaven to keep out such a foe as now is entered, yet no purposed foe to you whom I could pity, thus forlorn though I unpitied. League with you I seek, and mutual amity so strait, so close that with you I must dwell, or you with me henceforth. My dwelling haply may not please like this fair paradise, your sense, yet such accept your Maker's work. He gave it me, which as I freely gave. Hell shall unfold to entertain you to her widest gates, and send forth all her kings. There will be room, not like these narrow limits, to receive your numerous offspring. If no better place, thank him who puts me loath to this revenge on you who wrong me not for him who wronged. And should I at your harmless innocence melt as I do, yet public reason just, honour and empire, with revenge enlarged, by conquering this new world, compels me now to do what else, though damned, I should abhor." So spake the fiend, and with necessity the tyrant's plea excused his devilish deeds. And then from his lofty stand on that high tree down he alighted, among the sportful herd of those four-footed kinds, himself now one, now other, as their shape served best his end, nearer to view his prey, and unespied, to mark what of their state he more might learn by word or action marked. About them round a lion now he stalks with fiery glare, that is a tiger, who by chance hath spied in some purlieu two gentle fawns at play, straight couches close, then rising changes oft his couchant watch, as one who chose his ground, whence rushing he might surest seize them both, gripped in each paw. When Adam, first of men to first of women Eve, thus moving speech, turned him all ear to hear new utterance flow. Who's speaking here? Oh, yeah, it's Adam, first of men, thus moving speech, so it is Adam. what do I give Adam as a voice? I might just give him my normal speaking voice. Sole partner and sole part of all these joys, dearer thyself than all, needs must the power that made us, and for us this ample world be infinitely good, and of his good as liberal and free as infinite, that raised us from the dust and placed us here, in all this happiness, who at his hand have nothing merited, nor can perform aught whereof he hath need, he who requires from us no other service than to keep this easy charge of all the trees in paradise that bear delicious fruit, so various, not to taste that onely tree of knowledge, planted by the tree of life. So near grows death to life, whate'er death is, some dreadful thing, no doubt. For well thou knowest God hath pronounced it death to taste that tree, the only sign of our obedience left, among so many signs of power and rule conferred upon us, and dominion given over all the other creatures that possess earth, air, and sea. Let us not think hard one easy prohibition, who enjoy free so large to all things else, and choice unlimited of manifold delights, but let us ever praise him and extol his bounty, following our delightful task to prune these growing plants and tend these flowers which were toilsome, yet with thee sweet. To whom thus Eve replied, O thou for whom and from whom I was formed, flesh of my flesh, and without whom am to no end my guide and head, what thou hast said is just and right. For we to him is indeed all praises owe, and daily thanks I chiefly who enjoy so far the happier lot, enjoying thee preeminent by so much odds, while thou, like consort to thyself, canst nowhere find. That day I oft remember, when from sleep I first awaked, and found myself reposed under a shade on flowers, much wondering where and what I was, whence thither brought, and how. Not distant far from thence a murmuring sound of waters issued from a cave and spread into a liquid plain, and then stood unmoved, pure as the expanse of heaven. I thither went with unexperienced thought, and laid me down on the green bank to look into the clear, smooth lake that seemed to me another sky. As I bent down to look just opposite, a shape appeared within the watery gleam, bending to look on me. And when I started back, it started back. Pleased, I soon returned. Pleased it returned, as soon with answering looks of sympathy and love. There I had fixed mine eyes till now, and pinned with vain desire, had not a voice thus warned me, what thou seest. What thou seest, fair creature, is thyself. With thee it came and goes. But follow me, and I will bring thee where no shadow stays. Thy coming in thy soft embraces he, whose image thou art. Him thou shalt enjoy. Inseparable thine, to him shalt bear multitudes like thyself, and thence be called the mother of the human race. What could I do but follow straight, invisibly thus led, until I espied thee, fair indeed and tall, under a platen, yet methought less fair, less winning, soft, less amiable, mild, than that smooth, watery image. Back I turned, thus following Christ aloud, Return, fair Eve, whom fleeced thou, whom thou fleeced, of him thou art. His flesh, his bone, to give thee being I lent, out of my side to thee, nearest my heart, substantial life, to have thee by my side, henceforth an individual solace dear. Part of my soul I seek thee, and thee claim my other half. With that thy gentle hand seized mine, I yielded, and from that time I see how beauty is excelled by manly grace, and wisdom, which alone is truly fair. So spake our general mother, and with eyes of conjugal attraction, unreproved, and meek surrender, half embracing leaned on our first father. Half her swelling breast naked met his under the flowing gold of her loose tresses hid. He in delight, both of her beauty and submissive charms, smiled with superior love as Jupiter on Juno smiles, when he impregnates the clouds that shed May flowers, and pressed her matron lips with kisses pure. Aside the devil turned, for envy, yet with jealous leer malign, I'd ask them askance, and to himself thus plained. Sight hateful, sight tormenting, thus these two in paradise did
in the other's arms, the happier Eden shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love, but fierce desire, among other torments, not the least, still unfulfilled with pain of longing pines, yet let me not forget what I have gained for their own mouths. All is not theirs, it seems. One fatal tree there stands, of knowledge called, forbidden them to taste. Knowledge forbidden, suspicious, it's reasonless. Why should their lord envy them that? Can it be sin to know? Can it be death? And do they only stand by ignorance? Is that their happy state, the proof of their obedience and their faith? O fair foundation laid whereon to build this ruin! Hence I will excite their minds with more desire to know, and to reject envious commands invented with design, to keep them low, whom knowledge might exalt, equal with gods, aspiring to be such. They taste and die. What likelier can I ensue? But first with narrow search I must walk round this garden, and no corner leave unspied. A chance but chance may lead where I may meet some wandering spirit of heaven by fountain side, or in thick shade retired, from him to draw what further would be learnt. Live while ye may, ye happy pair, enjoy till I return. Short pleasure, for long woes are to succeed.
And so saying, his proud step he scornful turned, but with sly circumspection, and began through wood, through waste, o'er hill, o'er dale his roam. Meanwhile, in utmost longitude, where heaven with earth and ocean meets, the setting sun slowly descended, and with right aspect against the eastern gate of paradise levelled his evening rays. It was a rock of alabaster, piled up to the clouds, conspicuous far, winding with one ascent accessible from earth, one entrance high, and the rest was craggy cliff that overhung still as it rose, impossible to climb. Betwixt these rocky pillars Gabriel sat, chief of the angelic guards, awaiting night. About him exercised heroic games the unarmed youth of heaven. But nigh at hand celestial armory, shields, helms, and spears, hung high with diamond flaming and with gold. Thither came Uriel, gliding through the evening on a sunbeam, swift as a shooting star in autumn thwarts the night, when vapours fired impress the air, and shows the mariner from what point of his compass to beware impetuous winds. He thus began in haste. Gabriel, to thee thy course by lot hath given charge and strict watch, that to this happy place no evil thing approach or enter in. This day at height of noon came to my sphere a spirit, zealous as he seemed to know more of the Almighty's works, and chiefly man, God's latest image. I described his way, bent on all speed, and marked his every gait, but in the mount that lies from Eden north, where he first lighted, and soon discerned his looks, alien from heaven, with passions foul obscured. Mine eye pursued him still, but under shade lost sight of him. One of the banished crew, I fear, hath ventured from deep to raise new troubles. Him thy care must be to find. To whom the winged warrior thus replied, Uriel, Uriel, no wonder if thy perfect sight amid the sun's bright circle where thou sitt'st seats far and wide, and at this gate none pass the vigilance here placed, but such as come well known from heaven. And since meridian hour no creature thence, if spirit of other sort so minded, have o'erleapt these earthy bounds on purpose, hard thou know'st it to exclude spiritual substance with corporeal bar. But if within the circuits of these walks, in whatsoever shape he lurk of whom thou tell'st, by tomorrow morning I shall know. And so promised he, and Uriel to his charge returned on that bright beam, whose point now raised bore him downward to the sun now fallen beneath the Azores, whither the prime orb, incredible, how swift had thither rolled diurnal, or this less voluble earth, by shorter flight to the east, had left him there, arraying with reflected purple and gold the clouds that on his western throne attend. Now came still evening on, and twilight grey had in her sober livery all things clad. Silence accompanied, for beast and bird they to their grassy couch, these to their nests were slunk, all but the wakeful nightingale. She all night long her amorous she all night long her amorous descant sung. Words are hard. She all night long her amorous descant sung, and silence was pleased. Now below the firmament, with living sapphires, Hesperus that led the starry host rose brightest, till the moon, rising in clouded majesty, at length the parent queen unveiled her peerless light, and o'er the dark her silver mantle threw. When Adam thus to Eve, fair consort, the hour of night, and all things now retired to rest, mind us of like repose, since God had set labor and rest as day and night to men successive, and the timely dew of sleep, now falling with soft slumberous weight, inclines our eyelids. Other creatures all day long rove idle unemployed, and less need rest. Man hath his daily work of body or mind appointed, which declares his dignity, and the regard of heaven on all his ways, while other animals on active range, and of their doings God makes no account. Tomorrow, ere fresh morning streak the east with first approach of light, we must be risen, and at our pleasant labour to reform yon flurry arbours, yonder allies green, our walks at noon, with branches overgrown that mock our scant manuring, and require more hands than ours to lop their wanton growth. Those blossoms also, and those dropping gums that lie bestrown, unsightly and unsmooth, ask riddance if we mean to tread with ease. Meanwhile, as nature wills, night bids us rest. To whom thus Eve, with perfect beauty adorned: My author and disposer, what thou bidst unargued I obey. So God ordained, God is thy law, and thou mine, to know no more is woman's happiest knowledge, and her praise. With thee conversing I forget all time, all seasons and their change, all please alike. Sweet is the breath of morn, her rising sweet, with charm of earliest birds, pleasant the sun, when first on this delightful land he spreads his orient beams, on herb, tree, fruit, and flower, glistering with dew, fragrant the fertile earth after soft showers. And sweet the coming on of grateful evening mild, then silent night, with this her solemn bird, and this fair moon, and these the gems of heaven, her starry train. But neither breath of morn, when she ascends with charm of earliest birds, nor rising sun on this delightful land, nor herb, fruit, flower, glistering with dew, nor fragrance after showers, nor grateful evening mild, nor silent night with this her solemn bird, nor walk by moon, or glittering starlight without thee is sweet. But wherefore all night long shine these, for whom this glorious sight, when sleep hath shut all eyes? To whom our general ancestor replied: Daughter of God and man, accomplished Eve, those have their course to finish round the earth by morrow evening, and from land to land, in order, though to nations yet unborn, ministering light prepared, they set and rise, lest total darkness should by night regain our old possession, and extinguish life in nature and all thing, which these soft fires not only enlighten, but with kindly heat of various influence foment and warm, temper or nourish, or in part shed down their stellar virtue on all kinds that grow on earth, made hereby apter to receive perfection from the sun's more potent ray. These then, though unbeheld in depth of night, shine not in vain, nor think that men were none, that heaven would want spectators, God want praise. Millions of spiritual creatures walk the earth unseen, both when we wake and when we sleep. All these with ceaseless praise his works behold, both day and night. How often from the steep of echoing hill or thicket have we heard celestial voices to the midnight air, souled or responsive to each other's notes, singing their great Creator. Often bands, while they keep watch, or nightly rounding, walk with heavenly touch of instrumental sounds in full harmonic number joined. Their songs divide the night and lift our thoughts to heaven. Thus talking, hand in hand alone, they passed on to their blissful bower. It was a place chosen by the sovereign planter, when he framed all things to man's delightful use. The roof of the thickets covered was in woven shade laurel and myrtle, and what higher grew of firm and fragrant leaf. On either side acanthus, and each odorous bushy shrub fenced up the verdant wall with beauteous flower. Iris all hues, roses and jessamine reared their high flourished heads between, and wrought the mosaic underfoot the violet, crocus and hyacinth, with rich inlay broidered the ground, more coloured than with stone of the costliest emblem. Other creature here, beast, bird, insect, or worm, durst enter none, such was their awe of man. In shadier bower, more sacred and sequestered, though but feigned, Pan or Sylvanus never slept, nor nymph nor faunus haunted. Here, in close recess, with flowers, garlands, and sweet-smelling herbs, espoused Eve decked first her nuptial bed, and heavenly choirs the hymnion sung. What day the genial angel to our sire brought her in naked beauty more adorned, more lovely than Pandora, whom the gods endowed with all their gifts. And oh, too like and sad event, when to the unwiser son of Japhet, brought by Hermes, she ensnared mankind with her fair looks, to be avenged on him who stole Jove's authentic fire. Thus at their shady lodge arrived, both stood, both turned, and under open sky adored the God that made both sky, air, earth, and heaven, which they beheld, the moon's resplendent globe and starry pole. Thou also madest the night, maker omnipotent, and thou the day, which we in our appointed work employed, have finished happy, in our mutual help and bliss and mutual love, the crown of all our bliss ordained by thee, and this delicious place for us too large, where thy abundance wants partakers, and uncropped falls to the ground. But thou hast promised from us to a race to fill the earth, who shall with us extol thy goodness infinite, both when we wake and when we seek, as now, thy gift of sleep. This said unanimous, and other rites observing none, but adoration pure which God likes best, into their inmost bower handed they went, and eased the putting off these troublesome disguises which we wear, straight side by side were laid, nor turned, I ween, Adam from his fair spouse, nor Eve the rites mysterious of connubial love refused. Whatever hypocrites austerely talk of purity and peace and innocence, defaming as impure what God declares pure, and commands to some, leaves free to all. Our Maker bids increase, who bids abstain, but our destroyer, foe to God and man. Hail, wedded love, mysterious law, true source of human offspring, sole propriety and paradise of all things common else. By thee adulterous lust was driven from men among the bestial herds to range. By thee founded in reason, loyal, just, and pure, relations dear, and all the charities of father, son, and brother first were known. Far be it that I should write thee sin or blame, or think thee unbefitting holiest place, perpetual fountain of domestic sweets, whose bed is undefiled and chaste pronounced, present or past as saints and patriarchs used. Here love his golden shafts employs, here lights his constant lamp, and waves his purple wings, reigns here and revels, not in the brought smile of harlots, loveless, joyless, unendeared, casual fruition, nor in court amours, mixed dance, or wanton mask, or midnight ball, or serenade, which the starved lover sings to his proud fair, best quitted with disdain. These, lulled by nightingales, embracing slept, and on their limbs the flowery roof showered roses, which the morn repaired. Sleep on, blessed pair, and oh yet happiest, if ye seek no happier state, and know to know no more. Now had night measured with her shadowy cone halfway up this hill, this vast sublunar vault, and from their ivory port the cherubim, forth assuming at the accustomed hour, stood armed to their night watches in warlike parade, when Gabriel to his next in power thus spake. Uziel, half these draw off, and coast the south with strictest watch. These other wheel the north, our circuit meets full west. As flame they part, half wheeling to the shield, half the spear. From these two strong and subtle spirits he called, that near him stood, and gave them thus in charge. Ithuriel and Zephon, with winged speed, searched through this garden, leave unsearched no nook, but chiefly where those two fair creatures lodge, now laid perhaps asleep, secure of harm. This evening, from the sun's decline arrived, who tells of some infernal spirit seen hitherward bent, who could have thought, escaped the bars of hell, on errand bad, no doubt. Such where you find, seize fast, and hither bring. And so saying, on led he his radiant files, dazzling the moon, these to the bower direct, in search of whom they sought. Him there they found, squat like a toad, close to the ear of Eve, essaying by his devilish art to reach the organs of her fancy, and with them forge illusions as he list, phantasms and dreams, or if inspiring venom he might taint the animal spirits that from pure blood arise, like gentle breaths from rivers pure, thence raise, at least distempered, discontented thoughts. Vain hopes, vain aims, inordinate desires, blown up with high conceits engendering pride. Him thus intent ethereal, with his spear touched lightly, for Him thus intent ethereal, with his spear touched lightly, for no falsehood can endure touch of celestial temper, but returns of force to its own likeness. Up he starts, discovered and surprised. As when a spark lights on a heap of nitrous powder, laid fit for the ton, some magazine to store against a rumoured war, the smutty grain with sudden blaze diffused, inflames the air, so started up in his own shape the fiend. Back stepped these two fair angels, half amazed, so sudden to behold the grisly king, and yet thus unmoved with fear, accost him soon. Which of those revel spirit? These are supposed to be like cherubic angels, right? So we should probably give him like a cherry voice. Which of those rebel spirits adjudged to hell comest thou? Escaped thy prison and transform? Why satst thou like an enemy in wait, here watching at the head of those that sleep? Know ye not then? Oh wait, no, this is Satan then. Know ye not then, said Satan, filled with scorn. Know ye not me? You knew me once, no, mate. You knew me once, no, mate. For you there sitting where you durst not store. Not to know me are you, yourselves unknown, the lowest of your throng, or if ye know, why ask ye? Superfluous begin your message, like to end as much in vain. To whom thus Zephon, answering scorn with scorn. Think not, revolted spirit, thy shape the same, or undiminished brightness to be known, as when thou stoodst in heaven upright and pure. That glory then, when thou no more wast good, departed from thee, and thou resemblest now thy sin in place of doom obscure and foul. But come, for thou, be sure, shall give account to him who sent us, whose charge is to keep this place inviolable, and these from harm. So spake the cherub, and his grave rebukes of fear and youthful beauty added grace invincible. Abashed the devil stood, and felt how awful goodness is, and saw virtue in her shape, how lovely, saw and pinned his loss. But chiefly to find here observed his lustre visibly impaired, yet he seemed undaunted. If I must contend, said he, best with the best, the sender If I must contend, said he, best with the best, the sender, not the sent. Or all at once more glory will be won or less to be lost. Thy fear. Thy fear, said Zephon bold, will save us trial, what the least can do, since against thee wicked and thence weak. The fiend replied not, overcome with rage, but like a proud steed reined, went haughty on, chomping his iron curb. To strive or fly he held it in vain, all from above had quelled his heart, not else dismayed. Now drew they nigh the western point, where those half-rounding guards just met, and closing stood and squadron joined, awaiting next command. To whom their chief Gabriel from the front thus called aloud.
O friends, I hear the tread of nimble feet hastening this way, and now by glimpse discern Ithuriel and Zephon through the shade, and with them a third of regal port, but faded splendor wan, who by his gait and fierce demeanor seems the prince of hell, not likely to part hence without contest. Stand firm, for in his look defiance lures. He scarce had ended, when those two approached, and brief related whom they brought,
where they found him, and how busied, in what form and posture couched. To which with stern regard thus Gabriel spake.
Why hast thou, Satan, broke the bounds prescribed to thy transgressions, and disturbed the charge of others, who approve not to transgress by thy example, but have power and right to question thy bold entrance on this place? Employed, it seems, to violate sleep, and those who dwelling God hath planted here in bliss.
To whom thus Satan with contemptuous brow.
Gabriel, thou hadst in heaven the esteem of wise, and such I held thee. But this question asked puts me in doubt. Lives there who loves his pain? Who would not, finding way, break loose from hell, though thither doomed? Thou wouldst thyself, no doubt, and boldly venture to whatever place farthest from pain, where thou must hope to change torment with ease, and soonest recompense dole with delight, which in this place I sought. To thee no reason, who know'st own good, but evil hast not tried, and will object. His will who bound us, let him surer bar his iron gates, if he intends our way in that dark durance.
Thus much what was asked.
The rest is true, they found me where they say, but that implies nor violence or harm.
Thus he in scorn, the warlike angel, moved disdainfully, half smiling, thus replied.
O loss of one in heaven to judge of wise, since Satan fell, whom folly overthrew, and now returns him from his prison scaped, gravely in doubt whether to hold them wise or not, who ask what boldness brought him hither, unlicensed from his bound in hell prescribe, so wise he judges it to fly from pain, however, and to escape his punishment. So judge thou still, presumptuous, till the wrath, which thou incurrest by flying, meet thy flight sevenfold, and scourge that wisdom back to hell which taught thee no better, that no pain can equal anger infinite provoked. But wherefore thou alone? Wherefore with thee came not all hell broke loose? Is pain to them less pain, less to be fled, or thou than they less hardy to endure? Courageous chief, the first in flight from pain, hadst thou alleged to thy deserted host this cause of flight, thou surely hadst not come so fugitive. To which the fiend thus answered, frowning stern. Not that I less endure or shrink from pain, insulting angel. Well thou know'st I stood thy fiercest when in battle to thy aid the blasting veil, the thunder made all speed, and seconded thy else not dreaded spear. But still thy words at random as before argue thy inexperience, what behooves from hard essays and ill successes past a faithful leader, not to hazard all through ways of danger by himself untried. I therefore alone first undertook to wing the desolate abyss, and spy this new created world, whereof in hell fame is not silent, here in hope to find a better abode, and my afflicted powers to settle here on earth, or in mid-air, though for possession put to try once more what thou and thy gay legions dare against. Whose easier business were to serve their Lord high up in heaven, with songs to him his throne, and practice distances to cringe, not fight. To whom the warrior angel soon replied, to say and straight unsay, pretending first wise to fly pain, professing next the spy, argues no leader, but a liar traced Satan. And couldst thou, faithful, add, O name, O sacred name of faithfulness profaned? Faithful to whom? To why rebellious crew? Army of fiends, fit body to fit head, was this your discipline and faith engaged, your military obedience, to dissolve allegiance to the acknowledged power supreme? And thou, sly hypocrite, who wouldst seem patron of liberty, who more than thou once fawned and cringed, servilely adored heaven's awful monarch, wherefore in hope to dispossess him, and thyself to reign? But mark what I arrayed thee now. Avaunt, fly thither whence thou fledst. If from this hour within these hallowed limits thou appear, back to the infernal pit I drag thee chained, and seal thee so, as henceforth not to scorn the facile gates of hell.
too slightly barred. And so threatened he, but Satan to no threats gave heed, but waxing more in rage, replied, Then why am I, thy captive talk of chains, proud limitary cherub? But ere then far heavier load thyself expect to feel from my prevailing arm. Though heaven's king ride on thy wings, and thou with thy compeers used the yoke, drawest his triumphant wheels in progress through the road of heaven's star-paved. While thus he spake, the angelic squadron bright turned fiery red, sharpening in moon horns their phalanx, and began to hem him round with ported spears, as thick as when a field of Cirrus ripe for harvest waving bends her bearded grove of ears, which way the wind sways them. The careful ploughman, doubting, stands least on the threshing floor, his hopeful sheaves prove chaff. On the other side, Satan alarmed, collecting all his might, dilated, unstood, like Tenerife or Atlas unmoved, his stature reached the sky, and on his crest sat horror plumed. Nor wanted in his grasp what seemed both spear and shield, now dreadful deeds might have ensued. Nor only paradise in this commotion, but the starry cope of all heaven perhaps, or all the elements that at least had gone to rack, disturbed and torn with violence of conflict. Had not soon the Eternal to prevent such horrid fray hung forth in heaven his golden scales, yet seen betwixt Astrea and the Scorpion sign, wherein all things created first he weighed the pendulous round earth with balanced air and counterpoise, now ponders all events, battles, and realms. In these he put two weights, the sequel each of parting and of fight. The latter quick up flew and kicked the beam, which Gabriel spying thus bespake the fiend. Satan, I know thy strength, and thou know'st mine, neither our own but given. What folly, then, to boast what arms can do, since thine no more than heaven permits, nor mine, though doubled now, to trample thee is mire. For proof look up, and read thy lot in yon celestial sign, where thou art weighed, and show how light, how weak, if thou resist. The fiend looked up and knew his mounted scale aloft, no more, but fled, murmuring, and with him fled the shades of night. That's the end of the fourth book. Right now I would like to suggest that before we get into the fifth chapter, we all take a short break for some water, maybe some snacks if you've got the calories for it. If you've been sitting still, I firmly suggest you get up, get your blood moving. It's not good to sit still for more than roughly an hour at a time. So feel free to pause the video, and I'll see you in a few. Chapter 5. Now morn her rosy steps in the eastern clime advancing. No, that's not how you say advancing. Now morn her rosy steps in the eastern clime advancing, sowed the earth with orient pearl, when Adam waked, so customed for his sleep was airy light, from pure digestion bred, and temperate vapours bland, which the only sound of leaves and fuming riles, Aurora's fan lightly dispersed, and the shrill matin song of birds on every bough. So much the more his wonder was to find unwakened Eve, with tresses discomposed and glowing cheek, as though she had had unquiet rest. He on his side leaning half raised, with looks of cordial love hung over her, enamoured, and beheld beauty, which whether waking or asleep shot forth peculiar graces, and then with a voice mild, as when Zephyrus on Flora breathes, her hand soft touching, whispered thus, Awake, my fairest, my espoused, my latest found, heaven's last best gift, my ever new delight. Awake, the morning shines, and the fresh field calls us. We lose the prime to mark how spring our tended plants, how blows the citron grove, what drops the myrrh, and what balmy reed, how nature paints her colours, how the bee sits on the bloom extracting liquids sweet. Such whispering waked her, but with startled eye on Adam, whom, embracing, thus she spake. O soul in whom all my thoughts find repose, my glory, my perfection, glad I see thy face, and morn returned, for I this night, such night till this I never passed, I've dreamed, if dreamed not as oft I'm wont of thee, but works of day past, or morrow's next design, but This night I dreamt of offence and trouble, which my mind never knew till this irksome night. Methought close at mine ear one called me forth to walk, with a gentle voice. I thought it thine. It said, Why sleep'st thou, Eve? Now is the pleasant time, the cool, the silent, save where the silence yields to the night-warbling bird that now awake tunes his sweetest love-laboured song. Now reigns full-orbed the moon, and with more pleasing light shadowy sets off the face of things. In vain, if none regard, heaven wakes with all his eyes, whom to behold but thee, nature's desire, in whose sight all things joy with ravishment, attracted by thy beauty still to gaze. I rose as at thy call, but found thee not, to find thee directed then my walk, and on, methought, alone I passed through ways that brought me on a sudden to the tree of interdicted knowledge. Fair it seemed, much fairer to my fancy than by day, and as I wondering looked, beside it stood one shaped and winged like one of those from heaven, by us oft seen. His dewy locks distilled ambrosia, on that tree he also gazed. And O fair plant, said he, with fruits surcharged, deigns none to ease thy load and thy sweet. Nor God nor man is knowledge so despised, or envy, or what reserve forbids to taste. Forbid who will, none shall from me withhold longer thy offered good. Why else set here? This said, he paused not, but with venturous arm he plucked, he tasted. My damp horror chilled at such bold words, vouched with a deed so bold. But he thus overjoyed. O fruit divine, sweet of thyself, but much more sweet thus cropped, forbidden here it seems, as onely fit for gods, yet able to make gods of men, and why not gods of men? Since good, the more communicated, more abundant grows, the author not impaired, but honoured here. Here, happy creature, fair angelic Eve, partake thou also, happy though thou art, happier thou mayst be, worthier canst not be. Taste this, and be henceforth among the gods, thyself a goddess, not to earth confined, but sometimes in the air as we, sometimes ascend to heaven, by merit thine, and see what life the gods live there, and such live thou. And so saying, he drew nigh, and to me held, even to my mouth, of that same fruit held part of which he'd plucked. The pleasant savoury smell so quickened my appetite that I, methought, could not but taste. Forthwith up to the clouds with him I flew, and underneath beheld the earth outstretched immense, a prospect wide and various, wondering at my flight and changed to this high exaltation. But suddenly my guide was gone, and I thought I sunk down and fell asleep. But oh, how glad I waked to find this all but a dream. And thus Eve told of her night and thus Adam answered sadly. Best image of myself and dearer half, the trouble of thy thoughts this night in sleep affects me equally. Nor can I like this uncouth dream of evil sprung, I fear, but from evil whence? In thee I can harbour none, you were created pure, but know that in the soul are many lesser faculties that serve reason as chief. Among these fancy next her office holds. Of all external things which the 5 watchful senses represent, she forms imaginations, airy shapes, which reason joining or disjoining, frames all that we affirm or what deny, and call our knowledge or opinion, and then retires into her private cell when nature rests. Often her absence mimic fancy wakes, but to imitate her, misjoining shapes wild work produces often, and most in dreams ill-matching words and deeds long past or late. Some such resemblances methinks of I about our last evening's talk and this thy dream, but with addition strange. Yet be not sad, evil into the mind of God or man may come or go, so unapproved, and leave no spot or blame behind, which gives me hope that in sleep thou didst abhor to dream, waking thou never wilt consent to do so. Be not disheartened then, nor cloud those looks that want to be more cheerful and serene than when fair morning first smiles on the world. Let us to our fresh employments rise, among the groves, the fountains, the flowers, that open now their choicest bosom smells reserved from night, and kept for thee in store. And so And so cheered he his fair spouse, and so she was cheered, but silently. A gentle tear let fall from either eye, and wiped them with her hair. 2 other precious drops, that ready stood, each in their crystal sluice, here ere they fell, kissed as the gracious signs of sweet remorse and pious awe, that feared to have offended. So all was cleared, and so to the field they hastened. But first from under shady arborous roof, soon as they forth were to come open sight of dayspring and the sun, who scarce uprisen with wheels yet hovering o'er the ocean brim, shot parallel to the earth his dewy ray, discovering in wide landscape all the east of paradise and Eden's happy plains. Lowly they bowed, adoring, and began their orisons, each morning duly paid in various style, for neither various style nor holy rapture wanted they to praise their Maker. In fit strains pronounced or sung unmediated, such prompt eloquence flowed from their lips in prose or numerous verse, more tunable than needed lute or harp to add more sweetness. And they thus began. These are the glorious works, Parent of good, Almighty, thine this universal frame, thus wondrous fair, thyself how wondrous then! Unspeakable, who sits above these heavens, to us invisible, or dimly seen in these thy lowest works. Yet these declare thy goodness beyond thought, and power divine. Speak ye who best can tell, ye sons of light, angels, for ye behold him, and with songs and choral symphonies, day without night, circle his throne rejoicing. Ye in heaven, on earth join all ye creatures to extol him first, him last, him midst, and without end. Fairest of stars, last in the train of night, if better thou belong not to the dawn, sure pledge of day, that crown'st the smiling morn with thy bright circlet, praise him in thy sphere, while day arises, that sweet hour of prime. Thou son of this great world, both eye and soul acknowledge him greater, sound his praise in thy eternal course, both when thou climb'st and when high noon hast gained, and when thou fall'st. Moon, that now meets the orient sun, now fly'st with the fixed stars, fixed in their orb that flies, and ye 5 other wandering fires that move, in mystic dance, not without song, resound his praise, who out of darkness call up light. Air, and ye elements, the eldest birth of nature's wound, that in quaternion run, perpetual circle, multiform, and mix and nourish all things, let your ceaseless change vary to our great Maker still new praise. Ye mists and exhalations that now rise from hill or steaming lake, dusky or gray, till the sun paints your fleecy skirts with gold, in honor to the world's great author rise. Whether to deck with clouds the uncolored sky, or wet the thirsty earth with falling showers, rising or falling, still advance his praise. His praise, ye winds, that from 4 quarters blow, breath soft and loud, and wave your tops, ye pines, with every plant and sign of worship wave. Fountains in ye, that warble as ye flow, melodious murmurs, warbling tune and praise. Join voices, all ye living souls, ye birds, that singing up to heaven gate ascend, bear on your wings and in your notes his praise. Ye that in waters glide, and ye that walk the earth, and stately tread or lowly creep, witness if I be silent, morn or even, to hill or valley or fountain, fresh shade made vocal by my song, and taught in praise. Hail, universal Lord, be bounteous still to give us onely good, and if the night have gathered aught of evil or concealed, disperse it as now light dispels the dark. And so prayed they, innocent, and to their thoughts firm peace recovered soon, and wonted calm. On to their morning's rural work they haste, among sweet dews and flowers, where any row of fruit trees over woody reached too far their pampered boughs, and needed hands to check fruitless embraces. Or they led the vine to wed her elm, she spoused about him twines her marriageable arms, and with her brings her dower the adopted clusters, to adorn his barren leaves. Them thus employed beheld, with pity heaven's high king, and him called Raphael, the sociable spirit, deigned to travel with Tobias, and secured his marriage with the 7 times wedded maid. Raphael, said he, thou'st here... hang on, who's saying this? I have no idea who's speaking here, so I'm just going to read it as though it's not dialogue. Raphael, said he, thou hear'st what stir on earth Satan from hell scaped through the darksome gulf hast raised in paradise, and how disturbed this night the human pair he designs in them all at once to ruin all mankind. Go, therefore, half this day as friend with friend, converse with Adam. In what bower or shade thou'st find him from the heat of the noon retired, to respite his day labour with repast or with repose, and such discourse bring on as may advise him of his happy state, happiness in his power, left free to will, left to his own free will, his will though free, yet mutable, whence warn him to beware he swerve not too secure. Tell him with all his danger, and from whom, what enemy, late fallen himself from heaven, is plotting now the fall of others from like state of bliss. By violence, no, for that shall be withstood, but by deceit and lies. This let him know, least willfully transgressing he pretends surprisal, unadmonished, unforewarned. So spake the eternal Father, and fulfilled all justice, nor delayed the winged saint from after his charge received, but from among 1,000 celestial ardours, where he stood valid with his veiled? Oh, that's veiled, that's not valid. Where he stood veiled with his gorgeous wings, upspringing light, flew through the midst of heaven, the angelic choirs on each hand parting, to his speed gave way through all the imperial road, till at the gate of heaven arrived, the gate self opened wide on golden hinges turning, as by work divine the sovereign architect had framed. From hence no cloud or to obstruct his sight star interposed, however small he sees, not unconformed to other shining globes, earth and the garden of God, the cedars, crowned above all hills. As when by night the glass of Galileo, less assured, observed, imagines lands and regions in the moon, or pilot from amidst the Cyclades, Delos or Samos, first appealing kens a cloudy spot. Down thither prone in flight he speeds, and through the vast ethereal sky sails between worlds and worlds with steady wing, now on the polar winds, and then with quick fan winnows the buxom air, till within soar of the towering eagles, to all the fowls he seems a phoenix, gazed by all as that sole bird, when to enshrine his relics in the sun's bright temple, to Egyptian Thebes he flies. At once on the eastern cliff of paradise he lights, and to his proper shapes returns, a seraph winged, 6 wings he wore to shade his lineaments divine. The pair that clad each shoulder broad came mantling o'er his breast with regal ornament, the middle pair girt like a starry zone on his waist, and round skirted his loins and thighs with downy gold and colours dipped in heaven. The third his feet shadowed from either heel with feathered mail, sky-tinctured grain. Like Maya's son he stood, and shook his plumes, that heavenly fragrance filled the circuit wide. Straight knew him all the bands of angels under watch, and to his state and to his message high in honour rise, for on some message high they guessed him bound. Their glittering tents he passed, and now is come into the blissful field through groves of myrrh, and flowering odours, cassia, nard, and balm. A wilderness of sweets, for nature here wantoned as in her prime, and played at will her virgin fancies, pouring forth more sweet, wild above rule or art, enormous bliss. Him through the spicy forest onward come, Adam discerned, as in the door he sat of his cool bower, while now the mounted sun shot down direct his fervid rays, to warm earth's inmost womb, more warmth than Adam need, than Eve within, do at her hour prepared for dinner savoury fruits of taste to please true appetite, and not disrelished thirst of nectarous draughts between. From milky stream bury a grape, to whom thus Adam called.
Haste hither, Eve, and worth thy sight behold, eastward among those trees, what glorious shape comes.
Wait, that's Adam. Adam's calling. Haste hither, Eve, and work thy sight behold, eastward among those trees, what glorious shape comes this way moving. Seems another morn risen on mid-noon. Some great behest from heaven to us perhaps he brings, and will vouchsafe this day to be our guest. But go with speed, and what thy stores contain bring forth and pour, abundance fit to honor and receive our heavenly stranger. Well we may afford our givers their own gifts, and large bestow from large bestowed, where nature multiplies her fertile growth, and by disburdening grows more fruitful, which instructs us not to spare. To whom thus Eve replied, Adam, earth's hallowed mold of God inspired, small store will serve where store all seasons, ripe for use hangs on the stalk, save what by frugal storing firmness gains to nourish, and superfluous moist consumes. But I'll haste, and from each bough and brake, each plant and juiciest gourd will pluck such choice, to entertain our angel guest, as he beholding shall confess that here on earth God hath dispensed his bounties as in heaven. And so saying, with dispatchful looks and haste, she turned, on hospitable thoughts intent, what choice to choose for delicacy best, what order so contrived as not to mix tastes, not well joined and elegant, but bring taste after taste, upheld with kindliest change. Bestirs her then, and from each tender stalk whatever earth all-bearing mother yields, in India west or east, or middle shore in Pontus or the Punic coast, or where Alcinous reigned, fruit of all kinds and coat, rough or smooth rind, or bearded husk or shell, she gathers, tribute large, and on the board heaps with unsparing hand. For drink the grape she crushes, inoffensive must, and meaths from many a berry, and from sweet kernels pressed she tempers dulcet creams, nor these to hold wants her fit vessels pure, then strews the ground with rose and odors from the shrub unfumed. Meanwhile our primitive great sire, to meet his godlike guest, walks forth without more train accompanied than his own complete perfections. In himself was all his state, more solemn than the tedious pomp that waits on princes, when their rich retinue, long of horses led, and grooms besmeared with gold, dazzles the crowd, and sets them all agate. Nearer his presence Adam, though not awed, yet with submiss approach and reverence meek, as a superior nature, bowing low, thusly said, None can then heaven such a glorious shape contain, since by descending from the thrones above, those happy places thou hast deigned for a while to want and honor these, vouchsafe with us two only, who yet by sovereign gift possess this spacious ground, in yonder shady bower to rest, and what the garden choicest bears to sit and taste, till this meridian heat be over, and the sun more cool decline. Whom thus the angelic virtue answered mild,
Adam, I therefore came, nor art thou such created, or such place hast here to dwell, as may not often invite those spirits of heaven to visit thee. Lead on where thy bower overshades, for these mid-hours till the evening rise I have at will. So to the sylvan lodge they came, like that Pomona's... Wait, no, he's not speaking there anymore. So to the sylvan lodge they came, that like Pomona's arbor smiled, with florets decked and fragrant smells, but Eve undecked, save with herself, more lovely fair than wood nymph, or the fairest goddess feigned of three, in that Mount Ida naked strove, stood to entertain her guest from heaven. No veil she needed, virtue proved, no thought infirm altered her cheek, on whom the angel Hail bestowed the holy saturation used long after to blessed Marie, second Eve. Hail, mother of mankind, whose fruitful womb shall fill the world more numerous with thy sons than with these various fruits the trees of God have heaped upon this table, raised of grassy turf their
Yeah. It would really be nice if the dialogue was a little more clearly delineated. Raised of grassy turf their table was, and mossy seats had round, and on her ample square from side to side all autumn piled, though spring and autumn here danced hand in hand. A while discourse they hold, no fear lest dinner cool, when thus began our author. Heavenly stranger, please to taste these bounties which our nourisher, from whom all perfect good unmeasured out, descends to us for food and for delight, hath caused the earth to yield unsavory food, perhaps the spiritual natures. Only this I know, that one celestial Father gives to all. To whom the angel replied,
Therefore, what he gives, whose praise be ever sung, to man in part spiritual, may of purest spirits be found no ungrateful food, and fruit alike those pure intelligential substances require as doth your rational, and both contain within them every lower faculty of sense, whereby they hear, see, smell, touch, taste, and tasting concoct, digest, assimilate, and corporeal to incorporeal turn. For know, whatever was created needs to be sustained and fed. Of elements the grosser feeds the purer, earth the sea, the earth and the sea feed air, the air those fires ethereal, and at its lowest first the moon, whence in her visage round those spots unpurged vapours not yet into her substance turn. Nor doth the moon no nourishment exhale from her moist continent to higher orbs. The sun, that light imparts to all, receives from all his elemental recompense and human exhalations, and it even sups with the ocean. Though in heaven the trees of life ambrosial fruitage bear, and the vines yield nectar, though from off the boughs each morn we brush mellifluous dews, and find the ground covered with pearly grain, yet God hath here varied his bounty so with new delights as may compare with heaven, and to taste think not I shall be nice.
Also, it's just too much for the poor puppos. Everybody stops paying attention for all of 5 seconds, because they barged in here earlier. Everybody stops paying attention for all of 5 seconds, and it's just too much. So they start whining, and you can clearly hear it over the recording. Anyway, I digress. And so down they sat, and to their viands fell, nor seemingly the angel, nor in mist the common gloss of theologians, but with keen dispatch of real hunger, and concoctive heat to transubstantiate. What redounds transpires through spirits with ease, nor wonder if by fire of sooty coal the empiric alchemist can turn, or holds it possible to turn metals of drossest ore to perfect gold as from the mine. Meanwhile, at table, Eve ministered naked in their flowing cups with pleasant liquored crown. O innocence deserving paradise, if ever then had the sons of God excuse to have been enamored at that sight, but in those hearts love unlibiduous reigned, nor jealousy was understood the injurious lover at hell. Thus when with meats and drinks they had sufficed, not burdened nature, sudden mind arose in Adam, not to let the occasion pass given him by this great conference, to know of things above his world, and of their being who dwell in heaven, whose excellence he saw transcend his own so far, whose radiant forms divine effulgence, whose high power so far exceeded humans, and his wary speech thus to the imperial minister he framed. Inhabitant with God, now know I well thy favour, in this honour done to man, under whose lowly roof thou hast vouchsafed to enter, and these earthly fruits to taste, food not of angels, yet accepted so, as that more willingly thou couldst not seem at heaven's high feast to have fed? Yet what compare? To whom the winged hierarch replied, O Adam, one Almighty is, from whom all things proceed, and up to him return. If not depraved from good, created all such to perfection, one first matter all, endued with various forms, various degrees of substance, and in things that live of life, but more refined, more spirituous and pure, as nearer to him placed her, nearer tending, each in their several active spheres assigned, till body up to spirit work in bounds proportions to each kind. So from the root springs lighter the green stalk, and from thence the leaves more airy, last the bright consummate flower, spirit's odorous breathes. Flowers in their fruit, man's nourishment, by gradual scales sublimed, to vital spirits aspire, to animal, to intellectual, give both life and sense, fancy and understanding, whence the soul reason receives, and reason is her being, discursive or intuitive. Discourse is often yours, the latter most is ours, differing but in degree of kind the same.
Wonder not then what God for you saw good, if I refused not, but convert as you to proper substance. Time may come when men with angels may participate, and find no inconvenient diet, nor too light fare. And from these corporeal nutriments perhaps your body may at last turn all to spirit, improved by tract of time, and wing descend ethereal as we, or may a choice here or in heavenly paradises dwell. If ye be found obedient, and retain unalterably firm his love entire, whose progeny you are. Meanwhile enjoy your fill what happiness this happy state can comprehend, incapable of more.
To whom the patriarch of mankind replied, O favorable spirit, propitious guest, well hast thou taught the way that might direct our knowledge, and the scale of nature set from circle to circumference, whereon in contemplation of created things by steps we may ascend to God. But say, what meant that caution joined, if ye be found obedient? Can we want obedience then to him? Or possibly is love desert, who formed us from the dust, and placed us here, full to the utmost measure of what bliss human desires can seek or apprehend? To whom the angel, son of heaven and earth, replied,
Son of heaven and earth, attend, that thou art happy, O to God, that thou continuest such, owes thyself, that is, to thy obedience. Therein stand. And this was what caution given thee, be advised. God made thee perfect, not immutable, and good he made thee, but to preserve he left it in thy power, ordained by thy will, by nature free, not overruled by fate inextricable or strict necessity. Our voluntary service he requires, not our necessitated, such with him finds no acceptance, nor can find for now that hearts, not free, be tried whenever they serve. Willing or no, who will but they must by destiny, and can no other choose. Myself and all the angelic host that stand in sight of God enthroned, our happy state hold, as you yours with our obedience holds. On other surety none. Freely we serve, because we freely love, as in our will to love or not. In this stand we fall, and some are fallen, to disobedience fallen, and so from heaven to deepest hell. O fall from what high state of bliss into what woe!
To whom our great progenitor replied, Thy words attentive, and with more delighted ear, divine instructor, I've heard, than when cherubic songs by night from neighboring hills aerial music send. Nor knew I not to be both will and deed created free, yet that we never shall forget to love our Maker, and obey him whose command single is yet so just. My constant thoughts assured me and still assure, though what thou tellest hath passed in heaven, some doubt within me move, but more desire to hear, if thou consent, the full relation, which must needs be strange, worthy of sacred silence to be heard. And we have yet large day, for scarce the sun hath finished this half his journey. What in the world are those sounds? Oh well. Where was I? I got distracted by assorted sounds. Worthy of sacred silence to be heard. That's where we were. And yet we have yet large day, for scarce the sun hath finished half his journey, and scarce begins his other half in the great zone of heaven. And thus Adam made request, and Raphael, after a short pause assenting, thus began.
High matter thou enjoin'st me, O prime of men, sad task and hard. For how shall I relate to human sense the invisible exploits of warring spirits? How without remorse the ruin of so many glorious, once and perfect, where they stood? How last unfold the secrets of another world, perhaps not lawful to reveal? Yet for thy good this is dispensed? Oh, that's what I was trying to say, dispensed. Yet for thy good this is dispensed, and what surmounts the reach of human sense I shall delineate so, by likening spiritual to corporeal forms, as may express them best. Though what if earth be but the shadow of heaven, and things therein each other like, more than on earth is thought.
As yet this world... Is this dialogue?
I'm just going to read it like it's not dialogue, because it looks like a long monologue. As yet this world was not, and chaos wild reigned where these heavens now roll, where earth now rests upon her center poised, when on a day, for time, though in eternity, applied to motion, measures all things durable by present, past, and future, on such day as heaven's great year brings forth, the imperial host of angels by imperial summons, called, innumerable before the Almighty's throne, forthwith from all the ends of heaven appeared, under their hierarchs and orders bright, 10,000 ensigns high advanced, standards and gonfalons twixt van and rear, stream in the air, and for distinction serve of hierarchies, of orders and degrees, or in their glittering tissues bear emblazoned holy memorials, acts of zeal and love recorded eminent. Thus, when in orbs of circuit inexpressible they stood, orb within orb, the Father infinite, by whom in bliss embosomed sat the Son, amidst as from a flaming mount, whose uprightness had made invisible, thus spake.
Hear all ye angels, progeny of light, thrones, denominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, hear my decree, which unrevoked shall stand. This day I have begot whom I declare my only Son, and on this holy hill him have anointed, whom ye now behold at my right hand. Your head I him appoint, and by myself have sworn to him shall bow all knees in heaven, and shall confess him Lord. Under his great vicegerent reign, abide, united as one individual soul, forever happy. Him who disobeys me disobeys, breaks union, and that day cast out from God and blessed vision, falls into utter darkness, deep engulfed, his place ordained without redemption, without end.
So spake the Omnipotent, and with his words all seemed well pleased, all seemed, but were not all. That day, as other solemn days, they spent in song and dance about the sacred hill, a mystical dance which yonder starry sphere of planets and of fixed in all her wheels resembles nearest, mazes intricate, eccentric, intervolved, and yet regular than most, when most irregular they seem. And in their motions harmony divine so soothes their charming tones, that God's own ear listens delighted. Evening approached, for we also have our own evening and our morning, we for ours change delectable, not need. Forthwith from dance to sweet repast they turn desirous, all in circles as they stood. Tables are set, and on a sudden piled with angels' food, and rubied nectar flows. In pearl and diamond and massy gold, fruit of delicious vines, the growth of heaven, they eat, they drink, and with reflections sweet are filled. Before the all-bounteous King, who showered with copious hand, rejoicing in their joy. Now an ambrosial night with clouds, exhaled from that high mount of God, whence light and shade spring both, the face of brightest heaven had changed to grateful twilight, for night comes not there in darker veil, and roseate dews disposed, all but the unsleeping eyes of God to rest, wide over the plain, and wider far than all this globulous earth, in plain outspread. Such are the courts of God. The angelic throng dispersed in bands, and files their camp extend by living streams among trees of life, pavilions numberless and sudden reared, celestial tabernacles, where they slept fanned with cool winds, save those who in their course melodious hymns about the sovereign throne alternate all night long. But not so waked Satan, so call him now. His former name is heard no more, heaven. He of the first, if not the first archangel, great in power, in favor and preeminence, yet fraught with envy against the Son of God. That day, honored by his great Father and proclaimed Messiah King anointed, could not bear through pride that sight, and thought himself impaired. Deep malice then conceiving, and disdain, soon as midnight brought on the darkest hour, friendliest to sleep in silence, he resolved with all his legions to dislodge, and leave unworshipped, unobeyed, the throne's supreme contemptuous, and his next subordinate awakening, and his next subordinate wakening, thus to him in secret spake. Sleepest thou, companion dear? What sleep can close thy eyelids? And rememberest what decree of yesterday so late hath passed the lips of heaven's Almighty? Thou to me thy thoughts waste wont, I mine to thee was wont to impart. Both walking we were one. How then can now thy sleep descend? New laws thou seest imposed, new laws from him who reigns, new minds who may raise in us who serve, new counsels to debate. What doubtful may ensue, more in this place to utter is not safe. Assemble thou all those myriads which we lead the chief. Tell them that by command, ere yet dim night her shadowy cloud withdraws, I am to haste, and all who under me their banners wave, homeward with flying march we possess the quarters of the north, there to prepare fit entertainment to receive our King, the great Messiah, and his new commands, who speedily through all the hierarchies intends to pass triumphant and give laws. So spake the false archangel, and infused bad influence into the unwary beast of his associate. He together calls, or several, one by one, the regent powers. Under him regent tells, as was taught, that the Most High commanding, now ere night, now ere dim night had disencumbered heaven, the great hierarchical standard was to move. Tells the suggested cause, and casts between ambiguous words and jealousies, to sound or taint integrity, but they all obeyed the wonted signal and superior voice of their great potentiate. For great indeed his name, and high was his degree in heaven. His countenance, as the morning star that guides the starry flock, allured them, and with lies drew after him the third part of the heaven's host. Meanwhile the eternal eye, whose sight discerns abstrusest thoughts, from forth his holy mount, and from within the golden lamps that burn nightly before him, saw without their light rebellion rising, saw in whom, spread among the sons of morn, what multitudes were banded to oppose his high decree, and smiling to his only son, thus said,
Son, thou, in whom my glory I behold, in full resplendence, heir of all my might, nearly it now concerns us to be sure of our omnipotence, and with what arms we mean to hold what anciently we claim of deity or empire. Such a foe is rising, who intends to erect his throne equal to ours throughout the spacious north, nor so content hath in his thought to trial in battle what our power is, or our right. Let us advise, and to this hazard draw with speed what force is left, and all employ in our defence, lest unaware we lose this our high place, our sanctuary, our hill.
To whom the sun, with calm aspect and clear lightning divine, ineffable, serene, made answer, Mighty Father, thou thy foes justly hast in derision, and secure laughst at their vain designs and tumults vain, matter to me of glory, whom their hate illustrates, when they see all regal power given me to quell their pride, and in event I know whether I be dexterous to subdue the rebels, or be found the worst in heaven. So spake the sun, but Satan with his powers far was advanced on winged speed, and host innumerable as the stars of night, or the stars of morning, dewdrops which the sun impearls on every leaf and every flower. Regions they pass, the mighty regencies of seraphim and potentates and thrones in their triple degrees, regions to which all thy dominion, Adam, is no more than what this garden is to all the earth and all the sea, from one entire globose stretched into longitude, which having passed at length to the limits of the north, they came, and Satan to his royal seat high on a hill, far blazing, as a mountain raised on a mount, with pyramids and towers from diamond quarries hewn, and rocks of gold, the palace of great Lucifer, so call that structure in the dialect of men interpreted, which not long after he afflicting all of equality with God, in imitation of that mount whereon Messiah was declared, in sight of heaven, the mountain of congregation called. For thither he assembled all his train, pretending he so commanded to consult about the great reception of their king, thither to come, and with calamitous art of counterfeited truth, thus held their ears. thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, if these magnific titles yet remain not merely titular, since by degree another now hath to himself engrossed all power, and us eclipsed under the name of King Anointed, for whom all this haste of midnight march and hurried meeting here. This only to consult how we may best, with what may be devised of honours new, receive him coming to receive from us need tribute yet unpaid, prostration vile, too much to one, but double how endured, to one and to his image, now proclaimed. But what if better counsels might erect our minds and teach us to cast off this yoke? Will ye submit your necks, and choose to bend the supple knee? Ye will not if I trust to know ye right. To know ye right, or if ye know yourselves, natives and sons of heaven, possessed before by none, and if not equal all, yet free, equally free. For orders and degrees jar not with liberty, but well consist. Who can in reason then or right assume monarchy, such as live by right as equals, if in power and splendour less, in freedom equal? Or can introduce law and edict on us, who without law err not, much less for this to be our Lord? And look for adoration to the abuse of those imperial titles, which assert our being ordained to govern, not to serve. Thus far as bold discord, without control, had audience, when among the seraphim, Abdiel, than whom none with more zeal adored the deity, and divine commands obeyed, stood up, and in a flame of zeal severe, the current of his fury thus opposed. O argument blasphemous, false and proud! Words which no ear are ever to hear in heaven, expected, least of all from thee, ingrate, and place thyself so high above thy peers. Canst thou with impious oblique, does that say oblique? Oblique? Yeah, oblique. That's gotta say oblique, man. Anyway, canst thou with impious oblique condemn the just decree of God, pronounced and sworn, that to his only Son by right endured with regal sceptre, every soul in heaven shall bend the knee, and in that honour do confess him rightful king? Unjust, thou sayest, flatly unjust, to bind with laws the free, and equal over equals to let reign, one over all with unsucceeded power. Shalt thou give law to God? Shalt thou dispute with him the points of liberty, who made thee what thou art, and formed the powers of heaven, such as he pleased, and circumscribed their being? Yet by experience taught, we know how good, and of our good, and of our dignity, how provident he is, how far from thought to make us less, bent rather to exalt our happy state under one head more near united. But to grant it thee unjust, that equal over, equals monarch reign, thyself, though great and glorious, dost thou count of all angelic nature joined in one, equal to him, begotten by Son, by whom as his word the mighty Father made all things, even thee and all the spirits of heaven, by him created in their bright degrees, crown them with glory, and to their glory named thrones, denominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, essential powers, nor by his reign obscured, but the more illustrious made, since the head, one of our members, thus the reduct comes, his laws our laws, all honour to him done, returns our own. Cease then this impious rage, and tempt not these, but hasten to appease the incensed Father and the incensed Son, while pardon may be found in time besought. So spake the fervent angel, but his zeal none seconded, as out of season judged, or singular, or rash, whereat rejoiced the apostate, and more haughty thus replied. That we were formed, then, say'st thou, in the work of secondary hands, by task transferred from father to his son, strange point and new, doctrine which we would know whence learnt, who saw when this creation was. Remember'st thou thy making, while the Maker gave thy being? We know no time when we were not as now, know none before us, self-begot, self-raised by our own quickening power, when the fatal course had circled his full orb, the birth mature of this our native heaven, ethereal sons. Our puissance is our own right hand shall teach us the highest deeds, by proof to try who is our equal. Then thou shalt behold whether by supplication we intend address, and to begirt the almighty throne, beseeching or besieging. This report, these tidings, carry to the anointed king, and fly ere evil intercept thy flight. He said, and as the sound of waters deep, hoarse murmur echoed to his words, applause through the infinite host, nor less for that the flaming seraph, fearless, though alone, encompassed round with foes, thus answered bold: O alienate from God, O spirit accursed, forsaken of all good, I see thy fall determined, and thy hapless crew involved in this perfidious fraud, contagion spread by both of thy crime and punishment. Henceforth no more be troubled how to quit the yoke of God's Messiah. These indulgent laws will not be now vouchsafed. All the decrees against thee are gone forth without recall. That golden sceptre which thou didst reject is now an iron rod to bruise and break thy disobedience. Well thou I didst advise, yet not for thy advice or threats I fly these wicked tents devoted, lest the wrath impendent, raging into sudden flame, distinguish not, for soon expect to feel his thunder on thy head, devouring fire. Then who created thee, lamenting learn, when who can uncreate thee thou shalt know. So spake the seraph, Abdiel, faithful found, among the faithless faithful only he. Among innumerable false, unmoved, unshaken, unseduced, unterrified, his loyalty he kept, his love, his zeal. Nor number nor example with him wrought to swerve from the truth, or change his constant mind through single. From amidst them forth he passed, long way through hostile scorn, which he sustained superior, nor of violence feared he aught. And with a retorted scorn, his back he turned on those proud towers, to swift destruction doomed. Alright, that's the end of that chapter, and we're 30 minutes over the intended time period. Next week, we'll drop right into chapter 6. We're almost halfway there. Isn't that wonderful? Before I go, I should promote some things, if this is the first thing you've ever listened to. My name is Glacier Nestor. I do this, but I also do a great many other things. If you want to catch Paper Cuts live, it is in fact a stream. It happens Friday evenings around 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. usually, and that's something you can tune into. If you still have a hankering for live content, I do a variety game stream on Wednesday evenings on Twitch. I basically pull a game off the shelf that's not a game I've played from Frozen Tundra Finds, and I just play it front to back. It's not just variety games that I do on Wednesdays. I'm going to have some creative streams between games, especially. I have something really neat lined up for that. If you're more of a watch videos kind of guy, or gal, or person, I suppose. I should have just said dude. Dude's a perfectly gender-neutral thing. Anyway, I digress. If you're more of a videos type of dude, you obviously, can be watching these as they go up on Thursdays. Mondays are the original content day for YouTube. Everything else that goes up on YouTube is just a stream VOD. But Mondays mean that Mondays are usually Frozen Tundra Finds, or whatever I have, whatever game has won Frozen Tundra Finds. So that's usually what comes up on Mondays. I'm currently working on the next season of Frozen Tundra Finds, and I think you guys will like what I have in store. But anyway, that's my spiel. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a great week. Oh, and this has been Paper Cuts. I hope it didn't sting.